Welcome to the Living Undeterred podcast. This is your host, Jeff Johnston, and I'm super excited to speak with Tina Miller. I met Tina on the Living Undeterred U.S. tour in what was it again, Port Richey? Just north of Tampa.
Yes, yeah, I'm in Newport Richey, which is north of Tampa.
Newport Richey.
Yes.
I got the north of Newport messed up.
That's all right.
95 days on the road will make you a little delirious.
Absolutely, I believe it.
But no, I'm really excited to speak with you. I was honored to meet you at the event, hear your story, reached out to you, said, hey, Tina, I got to get you on the show, hear a little bit more about what you do now, where you came from, and really how you embody the living undeterred spirit and mindset. So with that, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share.
So how did you and I end up connecting? How'd you get involved on the Living Undeterred U.S. tour?
So I actually was invited through Jennifer, which is with Tampa Bay. And the reason why I was connected with her is because I'm a woman in long-term recovery from addictions. 24 years I celebrate, substance-free. And I opened up the first recovery high school for teenagers seeking recovery from addictions in Tampa Bay. And so that's how Jennifer and I had met, and she invited me to your event.
When I heard that you started a high school, I went, what? Wait a minute. Nobody just starts a high school. You can start a nonprofit, you could write a book, you can do a podcast, but no one that I've met yet just starts a high school. So tell me a little bit about where this came from. Let's learn a little bit about you, and then we'll get to eventually how you ended up where you are today.
So I actually was born and raised in Ohio, and my father was an active alcoholic. Until I was 4 years old, he found a 12-step recovery program. So I always joke around that my first AA meeting was when I was 4 years old, and I should have just stayed. But I didn't. I grew up and had to go on my own path of destruction and to realize that I needed help.
Right.
But so, it's funny. I always share with young people that have parents that are, alcoholics or addicts, that you either have people like me that was like, I will never be my father, I'll never drink like him, I'll never be an alcoholic, and all that. Or you have people that are just, they won't even pick up a substance because they really don't want to become like their parent. And unfortunately, I was one, that, I'll never be like him. And so I drank differently, than he did. And I didn't get DUIs like he did. So I thought I was different, but it was all up here that was the same. And anyway, so I'm going to back up a little bit. As a small child, I didn't start talking until I was 3. I had an older sister that actually talked for me, and I haven't quit talking since I started, but I remember retreating to my closet, and that was my safe place. And I would write or color, but I didn't feel like I had a voice at a very young age. And that's very relevant to my story when I share, later more. But I didn't feel like I had a voice. And, I was in this family that, my parents did the best they could with what they had. And I realized that today as a parent and as an adult, that I've come to a place of forgiveness for them and with them, kind of had to grow up with them. So like I said, at 4 years old, my dad got sober. And, I truly believe that saved his life. It probably saved all of our lives as well, the family. And then at 7 years old, my best friend was kidnapped, raped, and murdered. And that was very impactful in my journey because I had survivor guilt. Yeah, 7 years old.
7 years old.
And so I had survivor guilt. She was missing for 3 days. And I remember searching for her dead body and going through the woods and doing things that a typical 7-year-old doesn't do, but I also remember
Mhm.
saying to myself, it should have been me, or I should have stopped
Yeah.
it. So I had survivor guilt at 7 years old, and I actually carried that around for about 20 years until I really went to
Sure.
therapy for that and realized it wasn't my fault. And I was 7 years old. I was a child. But nobody, back then in the 80s, in 82, 83, people, they didn't have grief counseling and they didn't have all the mental health services
Right.
like they have now, especially school counselors and
Right.
that. So it was a very traumatic period in my childhood. And I didn't have the emotional support of my parents or other adults in the community. So it was really tough. And like I said, it was a moment actually where I made God irrelevant in my life because I thought if there was a God, then he wouldn't have killed my best friend. So I became an atheist at 7 years old. And I share that because
Okay.
that is where a lot, I think, of my students can relate. There's something traumatic that has happened in their lives, and maybe they've made God irrelevant in their life. So I share that little
They're
bit.
angry. They're angry at
Yes,
somebody.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I was an angry atheist for many years. So
Right.
then, so at 14 years old, at 9 years old, I started to smoke cigarettes. I would pick up cigarette butts off the ground and I'd roll grass, corn silk. I lived in Ohio. So not much to do. And I mean, I remember rolling up paper
Right.
plates and smoking them and just, I know my students are looking at me like, oh my gosh, lady. I just, it was disgusting, but what I was finding myself doing is I was trying to escape the pain, the survivor guilt, the hurt that I had felt as a child. And then I started at 14 years old, I started to drink. And then I had gone through years of rape and domestic violence. And so that was just a whole recipe of disaster, of destruction
Right.
and disaster. And so
Right.
lots of childhood trauma, lots of violence, and a lot of abuse. So I then, by 18 years old, I was drinking and, using drugs every day. I thought it would be a great idea to go to college. So I barely graduated from high school and I barely made it into college. I attended the University of Akron and right
Okay.
away started all the risky behaviors and started dating a drug dealer because it was convenient and yeah, hanging out with all the wrong people in the wrong places at the wrong time.
Right.
It
Right.
just
Yep.
one of the things I share with people is it's not about scared straight. Research shows scared straight does not work. uh, you can't scare
Right.
someone that wants to die, and I wanted to die. So it didn't matter what people would
Mm.
say to me. They would try to tell me these horrific
Right.
stories. And the same thing with my students, when people try to come in and they try to scare them. And it's like at that point, when a person wants to die, they can't be scared. And so I was
Right.
helpless and I was hopeless at the time. And I just wanted to die. And I remember in
Mm.
1997 or 1996, my father said, "I'm not going to pay for a party," and my parents cut me off financially, and I'm so grateful for that. And it was probably the hardest decision they've ever made, but it saved my life because what it made me do is it made me step back. I had to get 2 jobs. I had to pay for myself to live, but also I had to try to, pay for my addictions. And so that didn't go very well. And I quickly spiraled out of control. I had failed 9 classes in college, even bowling
Wow.
and dinosaurs. And I tell my students that I'm like,
Dinosaurs and bowling.
dinosaurs. I know, right? There's actually a class called
How do you
dinosaurs.
fail
I know,
dinosaurs?
right? Oh my gosh. It was like a .5 credit too. But, I just never attended, and, I still have a resentment
Right.
towards my bowling teacher because I didn't go to bowling class, the entire time. I show up the last day, I bowled a 198, and she was like, "You failed." I'm like, "I bowled a 198." But, she looked down at
Who
my
fails
feet.
in bowling
I know,
class, right?
right? And she looks down at my feet, and she's like, and you might wanna get bowling shoes next time. I had walked over a mile in the snow in my slippers, and I had my pajamas
Oh,
on.
wow.
And you know what? When you're at a bowling alley, you have to give your shoes to get bowling shoes. And I'll never
Right.
forget, taking off those slippers, and they were just like caked with, sludge and what, ice, and they
Right.
were so gross and disgusting. And I just remember that was one of these moments of clarity, like, wow, I have really lost it. I just walked this whole way to the bowling alley for this class in my slippers, in my pajamas. Like, it's just,
Mm.
so it was just one of those moments of clarity where I was like, yeah, this isn't good. But she failed me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh," I bowled good, but only because I took bowling when I was young and I knew how to bowl. But anyways, so yeah, so I had failed 9 classes. Also another thing that was happened to me in college was, uh, my relationships. I remember always saying that if I started to hurt people I loved, then I knew that that was like the line that I had crossed. Because social drinkers don't hurt people they love. People that may smoke here and there, typically it's not affecting their relationships. And but
Mhm.
I was severing all these relationships, and I remember someone saying to me that I didn't treat them well at all, and they had called me a few names what they did, but I won't say it on your show. And I remember thinking, like, that's not who I am, and I don't wanna be known as that person. So, I thought, "Okay, it's the drugs." So, I quit the drugs in '97. I was like, "That's it. I'm done with the
Okay.
drugs. That's what's causing me to be, not nice to people. That's what caused me to fail all these classes and all that." So, I quit the drugs, but of course, what happened is my alcoholism increased.
Went up.
Oh, it was out of control. And I remember I did everything, that a good alcoholic does is I remember scheduling like, okay, I had a tabletop calendar and I was like, okay, on Saturday, and I put a big star on my calendar. On Saturday, I'm going to drink. But I won't drink all week. And you know how that goes is you try to control your drinking and use.
Right.
And, and Wednesday came along.
Your drinking's controlling
That's
you. You're
right.
not controlling your
So
drinking.
Wednesday would come along and somebody's birthday and they'd invite me. Oh, okay. So I'd
Yeah, of course.
erase this.
Gotta go drink.
That's right. Erase the star on Saturday, put it on Wednesday. Okay, I'll drink tonight, but I won't drink any other time. And so what started to
Right.
happen was as soon as I would drink, I would lose all control. I did everything I said I would never do. I started to drink by myself. I started to drive drunk. I started getting in fights drunk. I would go to bars by myself. I switched my alcoholic drinks because I used to drink classy beer like Natural Light. And then I switched to boxed wine because I was super classy. And
Oh, that's a big step up. Yeah.
and so it was like, at 23, I was 23 years old, female in Akron, Ohio, and drinking boxed wine. And it was like, I thought I was classy.
Now, did you know, Tina, that you had a drinking problem? Because I look at my life and I drank since eighth or ninth grade in high school and drank, 5 days a week all the way till probably I was, 50. So, but I never really realized I had a drinking problem until later. I mean, after college, after getting married, because I either was in complete denial
Yeah.
or I had enough enablers in my life that they were supplying me with validation that I wasn't an alcoholic.
So I actually had the opposite. My dad would constantly share things with me about his recovery. And I was very well aware of alcoholism and drug addiction and
Mm.
how addiction started and, all of that. So it wasn't necessarily, I don't remember ever being in denial. I think I was more in denial
Huh.
thinking, okay, it's just the drugs and it wasn't the alcohol. That I
Or you'll
struggled.
outgrow it. You'll just outgrow it.
Yeah. I'm like 23 years old, and everyone I was around in college drank like me. But
Right.
I do, looking back, I do realize that the way I drank wasn't typical female, early 20s female drinking.
Right.
Like I would hang out with 12
Right.
guys. This is another moment of clarity. I remember being at a bar and my street name was Tay Tay. And so all my guy friends, my students have seen Tay Tay a few times. They all just looked at me like, oh gosh.
They're finding out a lot about you,
Yeah,
Tina.
they've heard my story, but yeah, and they have seen Tay Tay. They know Tay Tay once in a while. I have to, you still kind of have a little street, thug in you, even when you get sober and clean.
Yeah.
So, anyways, uh, so I remember being at a bar with my 12 guy friends, and my 12, and see, I hung out with guys because I drank like them, and I remember my guy friends saying, Tay Tay, why don't guys ever hit on you? Now I look back and I'm like, well, because I was hanging out with 12 guys. Hello.
Right.
What guy in their right mind's going to come up to a girl? It's only girl with 12 guys,
You had a little bit of protection. You had a little bit of protection
Yeah.
there.
But also, I remember them going up to this one, a couple guys at the bar, and they said, "Hey, you know that young lady?" And yeah. I've seen her around. And they said, "What do you think of her?" And they're like, "Oh, she's cute." And then they'd say, "Well, would you ever like hit on her? Like pick her up or date her?" And they're like, "Oh no." And I remember just looking at them like, oh my gosh, like they had a really strong reaction to that.
Huh.
And then the words that came out of
Right.
their mouth next was, she's unpredictable. We don't know if she's going to kill someone or if she's going to laugh with someone.
Right.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's what really like made me realize that is not the person I want to be. I don't want to show up and people be scared of
Right.
me or hurt. So that was another moment of clarity. But I think for the most part, in 1997, actually, my sister and I started going to Al Anon, and because we thought
Hmm.
our dad really screwed us up. And so I had exposure of a 12-step recovery program, and I got a sponsor, and she was the most grateful person.
Good.
Gosh, she was one of these, people that was like so grateful every day. And I was like, will you be my sponsor? She's like, I'm thrilled. And I'm like, oh, I should have never asked her. But what she did, her name was Lenora. I'm so grateful today for Lenora because what she did is she transformed my mind, and helped me be grateful. Every day I had to call her and tell her five
How?
five things I was grateful for, and she went. I swear she would like write it down, and so I wouldn't repeat it. So she would be like, I'd call her in September and be like, I'm grateful for air. And she's like, yeah, you used that July 18th. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I
Right.
had to come up with 5 more
So
things.
she held you accountable.
She
She
did.
held you
Yes.
accountable in a sense.
Yes. She held me
Yeah. Now, was
accountable.
that was that really the first person in your was that the first person in your life that had really started to hold you accountable?
Yes, I would say in a spiritual sense, emotional and mental health sense. Yeah, that was the first time somebody held me accountable. And I'm really grateful for her. And she took me through the steps. So during working a fourth step in Alan, I realized that, wow, I'm starting to realize like I have feelings and that I, my actions, actually do affect other people and I hurt people. And I started to be accountable for all of the all of the actions, even if I wasn't drunk, just being the dysfunctional,
Right.
unhealthy, miserable person I was, and how that was affecting people. And,
Yeah.
it's just all about changing those behaviors. And so I realized I was an alcoholic, and the first person I went to was my dad. And I went to my dad on a
Hmm.
Tuesday night because I knew he was going to his AA meeting. And I knocked on the door, and he opened the door, and he was like, like, oh, he thought I was dead. I hadn't talked to him for like 6 months. And he's like, what do you want? And I go, well, it's Tuesday night, Dad. I said, are you going to your AA meeting? And he said, yes. And I said, I want to go with you. And he's like, you do? And I said, yeah. I go,
Wow.
I think I'm a pickle.
Right.
I couldn't even say I was an alcoholic. I said,
I think I'm a
I think I'm
pickle.
a pickle. And he says, does that mean you like girls? I said, no. He thought it meant I
You
was
had
a
them all
lesbian.
confused.
No. So I said, no. I said, when you have a cucumber, it has too much juice, it becomes a pickle. And it can never be a cucumber ever
Right.
again. And so he's like, so you're saying you're an alcoholic and you want to go to a meeting with me? I said, yes, please. So he says, okay, well, let's go. So we went to this Alcoholics Anonymous meeting together. So I went back to AA with my dad. Like I said, I should have stayed when I was 4 years old. But so I really dove headfirst into 12-step recovery. Um, I saw what it did to my dad and our family. And so I was surrounded by people that loved me ever since I was, a kid. And it was a very supportive environment, taught me a new way of living, a new way of life. And then I slowly
Right.
began to understand, the higher power concept, and took baby steps into developing my faith. And but for me, I also had to go to therapy, and I had to do a lot of support groups and a lot of meetings. I actually attended 116 meetings in 90 days, and I wasn't court ordered. But
Wow.
I was told
Wow.
that all the manipulation, the
It was
control,
working.
the lying, everything that I did in my addiction, if I put that energy into my recovery, then I have a chance. And so that's what I did. Is I dove
Hmm.
headfirst into my recovery. And so by doing that, I graduated from college, and by the grace of God, and I went straight into social work. And so I've worked over 24 years in social work and juvenile justice. And I
Okay.
learned through that process that there were young people that were coming into detention or residential facilities, and they would get a little sobriety, go back to the traditional schools, and they would relapse like that. And I said, wow,
Hmm.
there's a huge gap in these services. And so what I did was I started to research recovery high schools. And I found that there was like 47 recovery high schools throughout the United States. Only one in Florida, and it was in Jacksonville. So I contacted the Jacksonville executive
Wow.
director, Dan, and he became my mentor. So for 3 years, I had received mentorship and research. And then I quit my state government job August 2020 and dove headfirst, started this nonprofit, and opened the first recovery high school April 2021. And it has gone,
So what's the name of your nonprofit?
the nonprofit is Florida Recovery Schools of Tampa Bay.
Okay. So still, let's go back before I lose anybody, even myself. So when you say high school, I think of the traditional, public high schools where they have their, mandates, their curriculum and all that. So what's a recovery high school, and how are they similar and how are they different?
So we are a private nonprofit school. So we are totally separate from the public school
Okay.
system. So what that
Okay.
allows us is it allows us to have autonomy, and it allows us to basically create our own schedule and what it is that we're going to offer our students. And so we accept ages 14 to 19 years old. All of our students receive mental health services, a recovery support, and an education. So our academics is online, and it's a great program specifically for our population. But during the day, we do things like equine therapy, expressive art therapy, visual arts, drumming, yoga, meditation, sound healing. Today, actually, when I'm done here, I'm taking my students to a local college for a visit. So we do different visits like that.
So is this curriculum something that is transferable to post-high school?
Yes.
College, or is this okay? So explain how that works.
So it's an accredited online curriculum, and they actually can receive their diploma from us. We had a student just graduate in July. She received her diploma. She had a 3.11 GPA, as well as 87% attendance rate. And we're a year-round school, so our students are with us throughout the whole summer.
Oh.
Yeah. And so we do take a few weeks off here and there, but for the most part, it's really important for our students to be with us during the summer. It gives them that extra support they need. But yeah, the curriculum is accredited.
Mostly online. It's mostly online, Tina.
It's
mostly online.
The actual credits curriculum is online.
Okay.
But we offer electives and mental health services.
Okay.
In person.
Okay. So, but your students have a actual place. Obviously, you're sitting at your school right now. And how many students are in your school right now?
So right now we have 2 students.
Total.
We have served 11 students over the past year, and these are students that have co-occurring disorders. So they have a mental illness as well as substance use disorder. A lot of them have come to us and they've been expelled or suspended from public schools. Some of them come straight from residential drug treatment. And so, they just need a stable, safe environment so that they can heal, and we meet them where they're at. So basically what I did is I created a high school that I needed as a teenager.
Yeah, exactly. It's the one you would have designed if you could have. So how many students are in your room right now watching this podcast?
2. They're just sitting right here.
Well, tell them I'm proud of them. So
he says he's proud of you guys.
Thanks.
Yeah. they're both working.
Yeah, because I guess one thing that we do in this I don't know, industry, I guess you'll call it. I call it the mental health industry because, obviously with my story, my son overdoses, my wife with alcoholism, my own alcoholism, my compulsive gambling, but I didn't have any childhood trauma. So for me, my issues stemmed from being bored in high school and being understimulated because I played sports and I had attention deficit. I always felt like I needed to be doing something. So drinking was just kind of like an exploration for me.
Yeah.
So I wasn't running from anything. I wasn't trying to mask my pain and suffering until Seth died. And then my drinking kind of morphed into, well, now I'm suffering. I need to drink. I need to numb my pain. So I think what's really interesting as I kind of travel down this road I'm on is how each story is so unique and so, but the end result, like death say, is the same, or the end result, let's say, let's say you take your own life, for example, death is the same no matter what the cause is, but the causes are often very different. And so what I'm trying to do is, my focus is kids too, Tina. That's where I really want to, that's where I think we move the needle. And at Living Undeterred, we're designing some online. I'll be kind of careful how much I can divulge because we have some pretty exciting announcements coming down the pipe. But we think that to move the needle, which I hate using that term. I started saying move the needle, and I thought that's not probably the best thing to use in the substance use
Yeah,
disorder
needle.
area. Is it dawned on me. I'm like, that sounds terrible, Jeff. Especially because that's how my son died,
Yeah.
was a needle with heroin and fentanyl.
Mm.
But maybe that's metaphorically the way I have to. Maybe that's how I have to approach this: is be direct.
Yeah.
But going back to how I think we change behavior. You talked about maybe fear and hope. It's like there's so much scare tactics and fear on this side of the fence that we need to start putting in some hope and inspiration.
Yes.
And I think the kids are the future. To get Tina to quit drinking 2 bottles of Pinot Grigio, or to get Jeff Johnston to stop going to the casino, that's not going to change the narrative on mental health, substance use disorders, and addiction. That's rehab, or recovery. But to really change things, we need to change behavior.
Yeah.
And that starts with kids. And I mean kids, I mean adolescents. I say basically 25 and under.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I want to spend most of my time, trying to make a difference from what happened to me. Use that as a impetus to focus on the kids. So I think what you're doing is exactly where I want to be as well. And that's, I think, the key,
Yeah, definitely.
It starts with the kids.
Yes. And they need hope. And, I think back of when I was their age, and then even as an early, 20-year-old, the last thing I needed to be told was I was going to hell, because I was living hell,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
don't tell me something I already know and feel. So
hell can't be much worse
that's right.
than what I'm
yeah,
doing.
I'm like, I would rather hell right now, But I do remember my friends, they had gone to a church and they had said, you should come to this church. And I was like, why? And my one friend was in and out of prison, and the other one was married and divorced like 4 times. So I was like, well, maybe if they have a chance at this church, maybe I have a chance, And I remember them saying, like, they love us exactly how we are. And I was like, really? And then I started to go to church, but I needed to be shown love. I needed to be shown hope. I needed to be shown that there was something more and better out there than what I was living or what I was trying to die from.
I think you would agree, Tina, that to change someone's behavior based on fear. So, for example, if you do X, you're going to go to hell. That may change your behavior, but it's not motivated by authentic, empathy, compassion, love, strength, courage. It's motivated by the fear of going to hell. And that's where some of the stops that we had on the tour were spiritual stops. They weren't religious stops. And the spiritual community, there's one in particular in Denver that I went to, that my last stop, the free spiritual community, they welcome everybody, and religion can shame people into making things worse, especially those in recovery and those battling, sex abuse or trauma.
Yeah.
Is that seems to me kind of an odd way that's used to get people to do what they should do.
Yeah.
Is to scare them. And again, I just don't think that's authentic. I think if Tina gets up in the morning and says, I want to be a better person because I want to be a better person.
Yes.
Not because I'm afraid to go to hell, or I'm afraid my community will look down at my parents, or I'm afraid that, like with my youngest son who came out as gay a couple of years ago, Roman, had I been a strong Catholic, there may have been a problem with his being able to communicate with me. And homosexual gay adolescents are 5 times more likely to take their own lives.
Yes.
And so, if we really want to focus on moving these narratives, we have to really focus on us, on the adults. I mean, this really, a lot of it comes from the adults, but the change is going to come from the kids.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
And we need to give the kids safe environments to come to us under any pretense.
Yes.
Anything. Hey, I've been sexually molested. Hey, I'm gay. Hey, I'm I did cocaine last weekend, and not have mom and dad start fearing them into making a change in their behavior. But you said, reach out, love them, understand them, support them.
Yeah.
And then maybe, just maybe, we can start to see these 800 Americans a day see these numbers start going backwards,
Yeah.
that are dying.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. And I think it's, like I said, I didn't feel like I had a voice. And the one thing I realized today is I have a voice. And I have a voice for all those that don't feel like they have a voice or have passed and they never got to express their voice. And, that's one of the things I teach my students is, I hear you. I hear you and I see you and you matter. Like without them, there's no Victory High School. And I want them to know, like, I'm a better person because of my students. And these two young men that are sitting here right now, I mean, one is going to graduate in December. He's 16 years old. He's brilliant.
That's awesome.
All of my students are
awesome.
brilliant. And that's what I tell them, when before they were told they were failures, they were mistakes, they were rejects, or, whatever. They've been told everything. And then they come here and they're like, wait a minute, like I have purpose. I'm going to graduate. Like, Alex, who's sitting here.
How has,
Alex, who's sitting here, he says to me,
go ahead,
he says the other day, he says, this is the first high school I've come to and I don't have to get high to like get through my day. Like, that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. How's the community embraced what you're doing?
So I think for the most part, the community, we have, huge supporters. I'll be honest, most people like you, Jeff, that have lost a loved one in addictions have been our greatest supporters. They find, that there's hope and that we have our huge fundraiser event next Saturday. And this mother came to me. She lost her son through overdose. And she said, can I put together a gift basket in memory of him? I'm going to put all of his favorite candy and his favorite restaurant, gift cards and favorite,
awesome.
She got socks and, all this stuff she's put into this gift basket in memory of her son. And she said, Tina, this was so therapeutic for me. And I said, not only is it going to bless us as a nonprofit, but wow, like how incredible that she was able to think of all the positive things about her son and remember all of that and then put that together in a gift basket to bless someone. So it's pretty cool to see. Now, some people in the community, they think, I won't even say it because I don't even like to speak, what I've heard.
Right.
But bottom line is, and this is what I share when I do speak out in the community, bottom line is everyone deserves a second chance. I don't know about you, but I've gotten 3, 4, 5, 6 chances.
Oh yeah.
And that's how I look at my students. Everyone deserves a second chance. And that's what we're doing with our students.
That there's a reason, there's a reason why my quote on the back of all my shirts say purpose becomes passion when it gets personal.
Yes.
Because you're exactly right. The biggest advocates, the biggest people in this space that I'm seeing since I got thrown into the mental health space 5 years ago are the ones that have a personal story. Yeah. And no different than when I came up with the tour, the whole tour idea, that came from me seeing a dad on Twitter that was raising money for breast cancer for his wife. Well, I'm sure that guy probably cared less about breast cancer until his wife got breast cancer. And then boom, all of a sudden he's an advocate. He's out there raising money. And I think that's great. But why can't we have passions before things become personal? Why can't we why do we have to wait for something traumatic to happen before we jump our and again, I think that's tough because if you asked me 5 years ago, I was interested in making money. I was interested in impressing friends. I mean, I was an investment advisor, traveling the world, spending money. It was me. And then all of a sudden, boom, life gives me, or death gives me an opportunity to become a better man, not a bitter man, as I so eloquently say at my talks. But it's like, I am no different than anyone else out there. And you're living proof that, you know, trauma, pain, suffering, guilt, anger, addiction, these actually can be motivators. They
Mhm.
can be ways of inspiration as opposed to ways of destruction. And that's what I'm trying to tell people. I'm trying to let me phrase that. That's how I'm trying to show people. My tour is all about showing, not telling. And I think what you're doing starting a school is exactly the same context as I did my tour, except yours is much more impactful, Teeny, because mine was only 95 days. Yours is going to be for a long time. And, you are touching lives of the people that, unfortunately, on my tour, I didn't see a lot of kids. Mostly I saw the parents. And you're touching lives of the ones that really need to be touched right now. And those are the kids,
Mhm.
showing an open door policy, love and compassion, and allowing them to fail. I mean, that's part of living is failing. And I think we
Yeah.
set such high standards with our kids with academics, if you don't get this grade point, you can't go to Harvard, or if you don't do this, you can't play college sports, and kids just, I mean, I think there's 7 Division I college athletes have taken their lives this year.
Mm.
And the reason I know this is my son's a Division I golfer at South Dakota.
Mm.
And I know this because this is the first time in history suicide has been so prevalent in college sports. And it's the pressures. It's the pressures of becoming a student athlete. It's difficult these days. But anything that you wanted to add about what you're doing, and is what you're doing something that you're trying to replicate around Florida and maybe around the country?
Yeah, actually, my dream is to have. I'm going to have four schools actually. One in Pasco County, which is this first one, and then one in Pinellas County, which is Clearwater area. One in Tampa, which is Hillsborough
Mm-hmm.
County, and then one in Manatee, which is where we had met down in Bradenton, Sarasota area. So yeah, we'll have four Victory High Schools, and the reason why it's Victory High School is because, like you had said about being a victor, not being a victim, and being victorious. And so that's what for my priority is to keep my students alive and then stabilize them mentally and emotionally, and then I'll teach them. So that's what we do here is that I teach them that they're not their label, they're not their diagnosis, and let's dive deep into who they
Right.
are and let's figure that out. Let's figure that out together. One of the things I love, like Alex, he just picked up a guitar and again, and he's phenomenal. He's just such an incredible guitarist. And so, we really dive deep into what it is your strengths are, what are your gifts, and let's share those with the world.
Well, that guitar thing really hit home because my son Seth was a very talented guitarist as well.
Oh,
And I bought him a white Fender. I bought him a white Fender guitar and the amps. And he would sit in the basement when he was like 15 and 16. He would play guitar, all night and write lyrics and stuff. And then one day I noticed it was all gone
mm,
and he had sold it for drugs.
yeah. Yep.
And that was the end of playing guitar, and ultimately down the road that was the end of him. But
Yeah.
so when you said that, it just kind of hit home, but not in a bad way.
Yeah.
Just reminded me of validating what we do every day when you hear stories like that. How can people reach you, Tina? What's the best way to reach you, to learn more about what you're doing, to talk to you, maybe have you guests on their podcast? What are some ways people can talk to you?
Yeah, they can actually go either to tinatalkstruth.com. That's my website. I am an author and a speaker. I had a radio show and a TV show, and I did comedy as well. So I love speaking at conferences and events, and also my school information. If they go to become just one, the number one.com, becomejustone.com, and they can see. Actually, one of the things that we do here is our students actually design T-shirts, and then we press them and actually sell T-shirts. So we have T-shirts that we sell that say "Hope Dealer," It says dope dealer, but the
I
D,
saw.
there's
That's
a H
awesome.
on top of it, so it's
That's
Hope
crossed
Dealer.
off.
Yeah, so our students, we sell those
That's awesome.
t-shirts. But yeah, on becomejustone.com, you can see everything. We have our fundraiser event next Saturday, so we would love any type of support at it. This year, it's been real slow. Ticket sales have been real slow, and we haven't gotten any business sponsors
Hmm.
yet, and it's just been real slow with this whole fundraising. So I'm not sure what's going on, but I have faith that it'll all work out. So thank you so
Well,
much
if it
for
makes you
having.
feel any better, uh, I um, I went around the United States for 95 days, and I didn't raise anywhere near what I would thought I would raise, and I didn't get, I think, maybe one or two corporate sponsorships,
Mm,
and yet each day I talked to somebody that changed my life.
yeah.
And so, hang in, be undeterred, keep living undeterred.
Yes.
Uh, for some reason, I think there is still something with this stigma on mental health and suicide and alcoholism and drug, and that even corporate America still is very late to the game.
Yeah.
Until these CEOs have an overdose in their family or they have their own alcohol problems, a lot of companies just kind of they don't really see the benefit of attaching their name to these projects. But yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't have one business. I didn't have one business reach out to me
Mm,
on my whole tour and I have a RV that's wrapped,
yes.
living undeterred.
Huge.
Not one, not one. Now I had people that sponsored me, Rigaku Analytical Devices, which actually is ironically, I'm going to be on their podcast here in 30 minutes. They actually invested in the tour. I had some state partners like McShin. I had a dentist in Arizona, in Nevada. So I've had individual, but I was just shocked that I didn't have a big corporation see the RV and say, "Hey, I love your story. Here's a chunk of money to help you pay expenses." I'm not whining, I'm not complaining,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
just to me, it just gives me more fuel it gives me more fuel to my fire
Yes.
that that we need to keep doing what we're doing.
That's right.
And at the end of the day, Tina, if we're not helping anybody, we're helping Tina and Jeff.
Yeah.
You know, and so I had someone say, "Well, Jeff, every time you talk, there's one person you're helping." I said, "Well, even if I speak in front of a group of 4 people and all 4 of them walk out thinking this guy's crazy, well, then I'll be the one person that got helped."
Yes.
So my default option's always, every time I do something, I'm helping Jeff Johnston. And that's good enough for me at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. Yeah. And it's all about just planting the seeds.
well,
And sometimes we never see those seeds flourish. And that's okay.
yeah, I really appreciate what you're doing. I admire what you're doing. I hope people reach out to you. I'm putting together a mental health conference here in Cedar Rapids, and I'd love to invite you to come out and be a speaker and tell your story and
Oh,
all
thank
that,
you.
and share it out here
I would
in the
love to.
Midwest. I
Yeah.
think my conference idea is kind of pick some of the key impactful people I met on the journey and invite them to come and share their story here locally. And then, plant a seed here,
Yeah. I would
plant a
love
seed in Cedar
that.
Rapids for what you're doing.
Just don't hold it against
Yeah.
me.
It'll be next year sometime.
I
So
was born in Ohio, so don't hold that against me.
no, it's all right. We play. Are you a Buckeye then? Cause I'm a Hawkeye. So you're not a
No,
Buckeye. Well, then
no.
we're fine then. We're
We're
perfect.
good. We're good.
We're fine. We're good. Hey,
Yes.
listen, thanks for your time. And I really, really admire your infectious smile and your laughter and your personality.
Thank you.
That's one thing I remember from you sitting next to me on the panel was you laughed like the whole time you talked,
Oh,
which is,
thanks.
yeah, laugh. And, you're telling your personal story and how horrific, but you find ways to laugh. And I
Yes.
think at the end of the day, we have to laugh, even if our own personal stories are traumatic and tragic. We have to find some way to laugh.
Absolutely. There's humor in, there's healing in humor, and I always find joy in the journey.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot, and keep living undeterred. Okay.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you, Jeff.